You died too young, Blue Reflection. As an unlicensed autopsy technician, it's my job to figure out exactly what killed it. So let's cut it open and see if it's ripe.
Carefully. Ah, fuck it!
The game starts with its first chapter, the prologue. Here, we are introduced to our protagonist Hinako, a high school girl who recently lost her raison d'etre, the goal of becoming the highest level of ballerina and étoile due to an unspecified sports injury. After attending school following a long hiatus, she meets Sane, a girl whom she hasn't seen since middle school. Sane is just so happy to see her, she loses control. Hinako is transported to the common, where she's attacked by a demon. Then she hears two mysterious voices and transforms into a reflector. Basically just a magical girl with a different name. She gets magical abilities along with a cool sword and one glowing blue eye. Wait a minute. Glowing? Blue eye? Where have I heard that before? Wait, it can't be. Sans? Sans Undertale? Oh my god. I gotta call Matt. I gotta call Matt. Sorry, got a bit excited there for a second. Happens to the best of us game theorists. Anyway, Hinako defeats the demon and stabilizes Sane's fragment, which stops her from going out of control. We then go back to school and are briefly introduced to the sources of the mysterious voices Hinako heard before. The mysterious twins Yuzu and Lime. And that's it for the prologue. Not a bad start. Basic, but it works. Now on to chapter 1. Wait, I guess we're moving on to chapter 2? Yeah, for some reason they skipped chapter 1. I guess they were too busy implementing
technology
to actually double check the game's script. Anyway, chapter 2. It starts with Yuzu and Lime forcefully nominating Hinako to the Culture Festival Committee, which doesn't even do much till chapter 6. Then they ask her to meet with them on the roof, like normal students. Hinako meets them up there, but before they have much time to talk, the character Rin randomly joins them. Then they speak to Rin about her love difficulties dealing with a crush on a boy. Which is weird that they have in my opinion, because to go off on a bit of a tangent, they never show this boy. In fact, there are no boys in this game. Or adults for that matter. So it's just kinda weird. This isn't a show like Love Live with idols, where you really wouldn't want to imply anything untoward with these girls because they're supposed to be pure and untouched for weebs to self-insert as being in a relationship with them. But this girl really brings up having a crush with someone other than the player. I don't know, it's just a weird choice to have on all fronts. After getting badgered for advice, Hinako blows up on Rin and tells her to basically go fuck herself.
そんなの知らないよ。二人の気持ちなんてわかんないし。そういうのは自分で何とかするしかない。他人に頼るのは間違ってる。
And you know what? I barely know you.
Oh yeah, because of this, Rin has a mental breakdown, and we have to go to the common to calm her down. Yuzu and Lime explain that the common is the collective consciousness of humanity's emotions in physical form. They say that the demons are here because of the Seraphos effect on the common, but I'd like to think that they're your personal demons. Like that one is drinking, and that one's eating too much, and that one's the time you shat yourself in the 4th grade but didn't have a change of underwear and you had to call your parents to get fresh undies, and every time you think about it you get embarrassed and want to die. I'm pretty sure that's canon. They also reveal that they too are reflectors. Who really could have guessed? They beat some random demon and explain that a reflector's job is to protect people's fragments. Once a reflector stabilizes a fragment, they can use the power of the fragment. To stabilize a fragment, they need to understand the emotions of the person whose fragment it is. Then you can help them in the real world, which isn't actually a part of getting stronger, just more of a part of being a decent human being. And they do all this to get more power to defeat. Oh god. He's back. He wasn't satisfied with his 400 new cameos in the remake. He wanted 401, so he's here to take over this game too. Damn you, Sephiroth. Huh. They spelled his name wrong though. It's Sephiroth, not Sephiroth. We stabilize the fragment and get some shitty Gachapon ring which we give to Rin, and we also resolve her love issues. It's thrilling stuff, I know. But then we learned something more interesting. Yuzu and Lime tell Hinako if they don't destroy the Sephiroth, then the world will be destroyed. But on the other hand, if they do defeat the Sephiroth, she'll be granted a single wish, meaning that Hinako could wish to do ballet again. It isn't outright stated yet, but it's pretty obvious from what Yuzu and Lime say and how they say it that this is actually a lot. And I think this is actually really well done. Set up the motivation for one character here, but also set up a conflict later in the story that will make them question themselves for what they're trying to do. And it just sets up some interpersonal conflict with the party. Credit where it's due, this is actually a masterful setup, and it's really engaging and makes me want to see what happens next. Boy, I sure hope nothing slows down the pacing much from here. Chapter 3 introduces us to the characters Sarasa and, briefly, the famous child actor Mao, but it mostly serves to make us more familiar with Hinako's personality and personal struggles, which is all good with me. There's nothing wrong spending some time to flesh out the important characters. That is, until a Serapha shows up. And boy, did this guy get lost on the way here? It looks like he'd be more at home in Bloodborne or something. That's not to say I dislike the design of the Sephiroth. They're all fittingly terrifying and feel out of place, which helps to sell how much of a threat they are and set the tone. I guess this is what they call gap. When a Serapha is close to a singularity, such as a school, reflectors can transform into their reflector forms, which can usually only be done in the common. Time also stops for everyone except reflectors, and the people wearing those little rings that we got. Those people with the rings can support us in battle by doing such things as using an iPad that is clearly off, crawling a drone strike, and showing us her nuts. We don't defeat the Serapha, we reflect it. Like the game's title, you know? This Serapha then goes to attack another singularity, which are all protected by reflectors. There are like 20 or something. And for the record, this never matters, but it implies there's some group of people or someone organizing the reflectors and giving them info about all this stuff. Which isn't exactly the case. I mean, there kind of is, but Yuzu and Lime don't seem to know who it is later in the story, so this confuses me a little bit. Also, the singularities are apparently protected by reflectors, but I don't understand what they're protecting. And they never explain what happens if they don't protect these areas. Like, what causes the singularity? Is it something physical the Serapha can destroy and that's why they're protecting it? Is it just some random area? Is it like capturing a command post in an FPS or something? Like, is that why the Serapha are there? I don't get it. And the world building on all this stuff is pretty poor. I think if they weren't going to do much with this, they should have just gone with something simpler. If the Serapha get this thing in the school, then they win. Whatever. Just keep it simple if you aren't going to do anything with the ideas. But maybe it's just sequel fodder. Chapter 3 is also where this game introduces free time, and its incredibly rigid gameplay loop. Every chapter from now on is free time, story, boss. Let's start with free time, which is one of the biggest flaws with this game. Free time gives you time where you can hang out with your friends, who you've met throughout the game, and raise your bond levels with them. As you raise your bond levels with them, you get cutscenes where you can learn more about them, and it's pretty much just like a little side story. Besides these side stories, the other thing you have to do are side missions. But did you know? Free time is actually a nickname. The full name is free time, and also the time where you have to do an incredibly large amount of boring, mandatory side quests. There really isn't much to say about these missions, other than just describing how you do them and how much they suck. There are two types of missions: pick up a bunch of fragments, or kill some demons. And as for how much they suck, I guess if I had to rank them on a suck scale, on a scale of a hot tub drain to a black hole, I'd have to rate them a your mom out of 10, so pretty high up there. They end up being a massive time sink, simple as they are. Each one individually doesn't hurt the pacing very much, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. From this point on, you usually have to do 3 to 5 every chapter, and these missions can easily take up more of your time than the actual story of the chapter. This is also the point of the game where the general pacing jumps off of a fucking cliff. If you've been counting, you would know we just got up to chapter 4, but you would also be wrong, idiot. What? Did you forget to include the interlude chapter? Not only do we have to deal with interlude chapters from now on, we have to start collecting points by doing missions to progress these chapters. That's all the chapters, including the interlude ones. Did we really need a chapter where Hinako has a swimming competition? I didn't. And that's all this chapter is. It's fan service and doesn't add much else, and quite frankly, I don't see the point of going into it. It's a gigantic waste of time, and only serves to slow the story down. Right when it was starting to pick up steam too. Chapter 4 then starts with a festival committee meeting, where they can't decide on what to do. Then we meet Akko. She tells Hinako that she's looking into the Citrus twins because apparently they just started coming to school someday, and nobody remembers them being there before. Then Akko disappears. Hinako thinks it might be the twins. Turns out they're unrelated, and we solve her problems. No Serapha this chapter. Next is another interlude chapter where you meet Shiori. She does your makeup and then has a mental breakdown after someone bullies her for being too kawaii. It's boring, whatever, I'm moving on. Chapter 5 starts with Hinako apologizing to Lime for suspecting her for Akko's disappearance, which leads to Lime responding by saying some highly suspicious things and walking away. I personally thought Lime was going to be the villain after this interaction. Sadly, she isn't. Her methods are just slightly maniacal. Then, we meet Chihiro. She squeaks a bit, gets accused of robbery. Lime resolves it by showing a video of the real culprit, and then Chihiro freaks out because she wants everyone to get along. After stabilizing her fragment, another Serapha finally shows up with a massive laser dong and fires his super laser piss! We reflect him easily and move on to, goddammit, another intermission. Fuck balls. Well, that's what I would normally say, but I actually like this intermission. I don't think it needed to be mandatory for game progression, but I did enjoy it. Fumio is a struggling pianist with an obsession with death marches. No, not that kind. It's when programmers have to do excessively long shifts to meet deadlines. Hinako learns about it and then brings it up almost every line, which gets on everyone's nerves, and I thought this was pretty funny. Also, Fumio is best girl, don't at me. I suppose now would be a good time to get into the pacing issues Blue Reflection has. Because, as you may have noticed, they're bad. Really bad. Boy, is that pacing bad. Free time takes way too long, though I was trying to see everything in the game that I could, but even in a casual playthrough, it just takes up way too much time. Besides the side mission grind, which could easily take you 30 to 45 minutes each chapter, even the parts where you hang out with your friends just take too long. In order to progress a girl's side story, you have to hang out with her a bunch of times, but rarely were any of these times enjoyable to experience. But how exciting can they really be when all you have are two characters standing around at such exciting locations as the Watch Store, some guy's tomb, and the DMV? The direction of the game is so weird with these parts. I'll come back to this. But fuck the free time. Who even cares about the issues with the free time when the developers were so far up their own asses they decided to put 5 interlude chapters in the game? For fuck's sake, there's only 12 main story chapters. Almost 1/3 of the game consists of intermissions, and they're all in the first half of the game. Maybe this would be fine if the main story chapters were just jam-packed with content, but they really aren't. Anytime the game starts to pick up pace in the first half of the game, you get another intermission. It's impossible for this game to pick up any steam with this structure. It's like the pacing gets punched in the dick, and gets punched in the dick another time for good measure. Like, fuck man, leave the poor game alone. Next chapter is another intermission. You know, right after the last intermission chapter. Guess we needed to intermit our intermission with another intermission. You meet 2 girls this time, so at least it's more efficient than the other ones, but that's all I have to say about it. Chapter 6 finally has the Culture Festival Committee decide on what they're doing, and it only took 3 literally useless cutscenes to do. Hooray! This game wastes so much time it would make Kojima blush. They decide they'll do a performance of The Little Mermaid, and ironically cast Hinako as the lead. Get it? It's because The Little Mermaid wants legs, and Hinako wants legs too. I think that's it though, I don't think there's many other similarities. So it's a pretty weak connection. We also briefly meet Yuri, who's really smart. She has an IQ of 300. 300? Damn! I'll have to update my official IQ power rankings tier list. Then, the next Serapha finally shows up. And it may seem like it's been a short time since the last one, since I really haven't talked about too much in between, but it's taken me about 3 in-game hours to get to this point from the last boss. So it's been way longer than it seems, and it's dragging harder than my grandpa's saggy ballsack. We repel the Serapha, and in Chapter 7, Lime says some more suspicious things, and the committee attempts to do a read-through of The Little Mermaid. But someone replaces script with one that is very depreciative of Hinako. After Mao provides some fake sympathy, Yuzu and Lime show up to tell her the jig is up. They know Mao was behind the fake script and the robberies from before. Mao explains she did all this to keep the girls at the school from making trouble outside the school, so their parents wouldn't have to worry or hear about all the stuff, and everyone could have a peaceful life. I see. She's one of those antagonists, you know the ones. The kind of character where their motivations make no sense, and they basically just serve as a straw man where the protagonist can just tell them, no, you're wrong, and basically refute anything they say because their motivations are just so stupid. But actually, with the script, she only did that because she hates Hinako, which alright, that's way more believable than this dumb shit. Anyway, she gets mad, causing a common leap, but she is so unbelievably angry that Hinako can't understand her feelings and stabilize her fragment. We get kicked out of the common, and in order to try and understand her better, Hinako proposes a competition with Mao over the lead role of the Little Mermaid. Mao accepts, and then unexpectedly a Serapha shows up. We repel it, but lament that we haven't been able to kill any of the Serapha yet. End of chapter. Overall, it's alright. There's some dumb shit in there, but it feels like the story is finally starting to pick itself up again. Scratch that. Another intermission, of course. This time with the 300 IQ genius Yuri. It's not that bad, though. I did enjoy it, because dealing with one of those genius autistic girls is usually pretty fun. And I'm not just calling her autistic to be mean or funny. She literally says she's mentally disabled. The part where Hinako tells Yuri about how she has no concept of normal social cues while they talk about how delicious their uneaten parfaits are was pretty enjoyable. But it doesn't carry the main story forward at all and doesn't really lead to anything, so it's still a bit disappointing. Yuri is investigating the time and space anomalies at the school though, which actually is relevant to the main story and will actually impact things pretty soon. So it's kind of odd, but this is the only intermission with actual plot relevance. I wonder why they made it an interlude. It feels closer to Akko or Sane's introduction chapters, which weren't interludes. Either way, that's the last intermission. Thank the fucking Lord. On to chapter 8 then. Here we have Hinako and Mao, and they have their acting competition. Mao's performance is so good that everyone in the room dies and they go into the common again to stabilize her fragment. We see a cutscene and learn of Mao's past, where apparently she was just so talented, her parents both wanted to take advantage of her to make money. It's very original, I know. Hinako also hears two familiar voices that tell her how impressed they were with her ballet. Heh, foreshadowing. Then we exit the common and come to a little bit of an understanding with Mao. But just then, one of the Serapha we reflected before it returns. It's all souped up too. We get completely demolished. It's all scripted, of course. The battles in this game are far too easy to ever lose, even playing on hard. Then, Mao comes to the rescue. She transforms into a magical girl. Well, I wish that's what happened. She's moving around without a ring, and she does the pose Hinako does when she transforms, so I thought she might be a surprise fourth party member, but no, I'm afraid not. She does power up our weapons though, and makes it so we're so strong we can defeat Serapha finally. Not just reflect, defeat. We can kill them. They're gone for good. Our weapons even visually change too, which is a nice touch. I do find it funny though that Lime always puts such an emphasis on getting more fragments to defeat the Serapha during the story, but this is the only time it's ever actually made any sort of difference. And it kind of makes some of the previous chapters look a little bit useless. But I don't know. Back to the story, we kill the Serapha and we complete the chapter. I have to say, this is where the game actually starts to pick up steam again. While the first few chapters feel like the story is just spinning its wheels, not making any real progress against the Sephiroth, and having an intermission every 2 seconds, it feels like this is where the game takes a turn for the better in the pacing department. Between finally being able to kill Sephiroth and no more intermissions, it makes the game feel so much more smooth. We can see some actual forward progress on our goal, and can mostly just focus on the story. It's a bit of a shame that the game had such a rough beginning, because this is probably the best part of it, but based on the achievements on Steam and the PSN, it doesn't look like a lot of people made it this far, which I can't blame them for, but it's a bit unfortunate. I'm not saying these final chapters don't have problems, they sure do, but they show us what a much more focused Blue Reflection would look like, and it's a shame the whole game isn't like this, but if it was, I probably wouldn't be here right now talking about it. So let's just continue with the story. We made it this far, only a few more chapters left, may as well wrap it up. In Chapter 9, the jig is finally up. Yuri has used science and logic to deduce that Hinako won't get a wish once this is all over because the common and the real world are two different worlds. I don't exactly understand this though, it feels very clumsy. How can Yuri say for certain she can't get a wish? I don't think this is within the sphere of easily rational logic. I mean, they're magical girls. Why is a wish suddenly beyond the realm of possibility? This doesn't matter in the end since Yuzu and Lime admit it was a lie, but it feels really contrived to get to this point. Hinako has some moments of self-doubt, which work pretty well. In movie structure terms, this would be the commonly used second act low point. Sarasa goes mental again, and Hinako has to calm her down. She goes inside and sees her true feelings. Sarasa always believed in Hinako, and Hinako realizes this is probably the same way Yuzu and Lime feel about her. So she decides to trust in them too, when, conveniently, Laser Piss Man shows up again. We defeat it, and move on to the next chapter. Chapter 10 starts with Yuzu and Lime debating whether or not they should reveal their secret to Hinako, and then, for some reason, the game decides to focus on two side characters who haven't been relevant to the main story yet. This part is also not relevant to the main story, so I have no idea why it's one of the main chapters, especially when there's only 2 chapters left. Maybe they just wanted to fill some time? A Serapha shows up, we defeat it, and Yuzu and Lime decide to reveal their secret. Apparently,
私たちは、もう、死んでいるの。
Aw, come on! This game is definitely no stranger to using cliches, but did they really need to use that one? It takes you completely off guard, and into the next chapter now, they reveal that they died in an experiment, but the Common brought them back to life. They also reveal that the Sephiroth come to battle once every million years, and the victorious Serapha shapes the world in their image, meaning that the victorious Serapha created the world as it is now, and it's actually none other than the Common. What a twist! The Common uses the power of emotions to fight, and therefore chooses a special human to fight for it, the Reflector. Does this mean at some point they used the dinosaurs to fight? Because I think I'd rather play that game. But apparently, since Yuzu and Lime died in the experiment, they got Reflector powers, and also got to choose the Reflector, for some unexplained reason. They chose Hinako because all throughout their testing, they would watch her ballet on TV, and use her as an inspiration to keep them going. It's a bittersweet scene. Finally hearing the twins' motivations for choosing Hinako is revealing and touching. But this news is appropriately devastating to Hinako, who also finds out that she will lose them once they kill the last Serapha because time will be reset to before they met and Hinako will lose her memories. This is actually a fairly effective scene, but I can't help but have a few questions. Like, they make a big deal about Hinako being the chosen reflector, but earlier they said there were 21 zones each guarded by their own reflectors, so was that a lie too? And if so, why did they lie about that? Or did the game's writers just forget about that? And also, Yuzu and Lime lied about getting a wish, but couldn't they just ask the Common once they defeat the rest of the Serapha? Surely the world doesn't actually need to be reset, it's up to whatever the Common wants, and we haven't been shown either way whether or not it cares about humans or their reflectors. As their chosen heroes, I don't understand why they couldn't just be like, hey, can you fix Hinako's legs since we killed all those other guys for you? Thanks. Also, if the Serapha can do whatever they want with the Earth, then Yuri's conclusion from before about Hinako not being able to get her legs fixed doesn't hold any water anymore. Not that it ever did, but maybe that doesn't really matter because what they lied about was getting the wish, but I just don't see why this is all taken the way it is. It seems like they make an unreasonable amount of unfounded conclusions here, and the messy script really affects what otherwise is a well-structured and constructed scene. The last Serapha returns and Hinako refuses to defeat it, not wanting the twins to disappear forever. After spending some time with them not eating their parfaits and going around and talking with her other friends, she eventually gets over her hesitation and resolves to kill the last Serapha. After this, the final chapter begins, and the actual last Serapha shows up. The embodiment of the Common, Dath. And he looks like he means trouble. He starts by very blatantly ripping off Evangelion. Then we fight, where he also does his best Artorias impression. We beat him, and then we sit on the ground and hug a bit before Yuzu and Lime finally disappear. The world resets, and we see Hinako back on her first day of school again. As Hinako prepares to enter the schoolyard, she hears the voices of the twins, finally proving the strength of their bonds. And then the credits roll. Honestly, for all the ups and downs this story had, I think this is still a pretty good ending. But I do have some complaints with it. For how strong the bond between Hinako and the twins is supposed to be, I didn't really start to feel that until the end of the game. I think the problem is we just never really got to know too much about them, and we didn't really spend a whole lot of time with them either. I know they're supposed to be mysterious, but you get to spend so much time with other characters, and all their side stories and little random interactions, but it felt like Yuzu and Lime got left out far too often. Instead of having chapters that don't have anything to do with the story, like most of the interlude chapters, they should have had some times where you really get the chance to learn something about the twins. And I feel as if the festival committee side plot was underutilized too. They should have used it to have Hinako meet various people around the school in lieu of the interlude chapters, or just use it to have Hinako spend some time with Yuzu and Lime, or both. It feels like there are some missed opportunities here for just some bonding, and while that may not directly move the story forward, I'm not going to complain about some chapters developing the relationship between your main characters, especially when that's kind of the point of the game. Also, I wish Dath showed up earlier. 11th hour villains never really do it for me, and we're supposed to be fighting the other Sephiroth for Dath anyway, so why wouldn't Dath show up earlier? You know, give us advice, upgrade our weapons, something. I mean, Dath is a pretty important character for like everything in this game. The Earth literally is as it is now because of Dath. Introduce that type of shit way earlier. Why just sit back and hope that we kill the other Serapha? It's a big missed opportunity in my opinion. And while I'm talking about missed opportunities, let's dive into the interactions with the girls of this game and what confuses me a little bit. I don't understand what the developers were really going for when you hang out with the girls in this game. Like, you go to the watch store in order to raise their bond or progress their side story. These parts are just so dry, they're awful. These aren't dates because there isn't any romance in this game, except for Rin and her off-screen crush. Are you just supposed to develop a friendly relationship with these characters? Because this shit is so boring, and honestly, the more I hang out with them, the less I wanted to know any of them. I think it's the mark of a well-written character, where you really wish you could know them in real life and have the interactions you have with them in the game. And quite frankly, with one exception, I don't want to know any of these characters in real life. Maybe these parts would work if you were extremely lonely and you needed to get your fill of boring human interaction, but to me personally, I wouldn't really want to know any of these girls. If they have more personality, these scenes just don't show it. If I had a choice between hanging out with most of these girls IRL or hanging out with a pile of sand, then I think that pile of sand and I would be having a grand old time. To talk about the girls in relation to the pacing, they really fuck it harder than it already was. I glossed over most of the intermissions, but I can't overstate just how much they fuck the pacing of this game. Boy, I'm sure glad we could take a break from the story to hear about how this girl is struggling with piano, or this other girl is being bullied for being too kawaii. And, you know, all the developers had to do was make the interludes optional. I'm not asking for an ambitious, non-linear game, but what I am asking for is to just let me continue the story if I damn well want to. I don't want to listen to these girls' struggles. Like, I'll do it, but let me do it on my own time. Don't stop the game to do all this totally irrelevant content. There's a time and a place for content like this, and it isn't shoved into the middle of the main story. Besides, what was the point of having two different side stories for the characters? You have the stuff that happens in the interlude, and the stuff that happens in the side story that you get for hanging out with the girls, and neither are very compelling. I think they should have just introduced the characters briefly, and then let you pick and choose whose side story you want to experience, and cut all the interludes, or just work them into the side stories. Because, quite frankly, some are better than others, but none are really great. I will admit I liked Fumio's side story because it was funny and had some actual personality, and it feels like it's the only part of the game where they had some fun writing it, but most of the other side stories are just a total waste of time, like Chihiro's. Her intermission is basically just her getting bullied for being talented and making arts and crafts, and other people get jealous. That's fine, but then her side story is just her getting bullied for being talented at gardening and other people getting jealous. It's a total retread, and it's not any better the second time. It wasn't particularly good the first time either. Sane's side story revolves around a rap battle. What the fuck? What is this, the early 2000s? It's Japanese rap too, so it's hot garbage to put it lightly. I'm not going to go through all of them, but when less than half of your 5 intermissions are passable, maybe you should keep that shit to the side and get it out of the main story. But that's enough ragging on the game for now. Let's get into some of the stuff that I actually enjoyed, because hey, Blue Reflection actually does have a lot of good in it. The combat took me a bit to warm up to, but once you unlock more actions and moves, it really feels like it has some depth to it. See, the system works by putting everyone in the battle on a timeline. You all move towards the center of the timeline, and once you reach the center, it's that character's move. This system is pretty neat. You get a nice variety of strategy here, to either charge your ether to do special commands or powerful combos, heal or buff, attack to do damage, or attack to try and push enemies back on the timeline. It can feel like a match of keep away at some times, or a full-on assault at other times. The game is a little bit too easy though, in my opinion, even when playing on hard. It's real easy to just prevent the enemies from ever attacking, or kill them before you even need to do that, and you can steamroll basically any basic battle without too much strategy. The Serapha fights are really good though, especially once you unlock more moves and commands. They're super fun. I loved trying to stack as many power-ups I could on Hinako and just absolutely shit out damage. There's an annoying quirk with these battles where if you do damage, but the Serapha moves to its next phase because of the attack, the damage doesn't actually seem to go through, which is mildly infuriating, especially when you're capping out the damage, but it's not too bad. It gives you more opportunity to just do it again. Besides just the fun combat, the pumping music really brings the whole thing together. In fact, the music really brings a lot of the game together, and it has a great range of emotions. Every part of the game is enhanced by the soundtrack, and honestly, I have nothing but good things to say about it. Except maybe that some of the names are pretty weird for the tracks. Like, imagine trying to ask someone to play the song Yeah, I ain't doing that. Or Bingy C17H21NO. What even is that? Why would you name a track that? Never mind, Bingy, I don't know what that is, but why is this a chemical formula? And what even is it? Oh, it's, diphenhydramine. Of course, I should have known. Or it could be these 5 other things. Well, whatever. Good song, weird name. The music really sells you on so many parts of the game. To the dreamy, nostalgic, late summer feel of the school, to the lonely, isolated feel of the Sorrow Zone, to the absolute hype and excitement of the battles. And these are just some of my favorite specific examples. The whole game is up to this quality, and there's no part that I would point to and say I was let down by the soundtrack. The music is truly great. The art design is great too. All of the illustrations done for this game are honestly incredible. Like, just look at this concept art. It doesn't look nearly as good in-game, but they definitely had someone talented doing the art here, so the art direction was never an issue, though you probably couldn't ever get something as good looking as this in an actual game, so I'm not too disappointed. The girls are all well designed too and pretty cute. If that's what you're into and just want to play the game for that, you should be all set. Although the artist of the game, Mel Kishina, does seem to be a bit of a weirdo. Just let me read you a bit of an article talking about him. Kishida-sensei used to have a fetish meeting with the production crew. They would talk about the girls' secret side and which side was their kink. At first, everyone was very shy, and then I started off by saying I like girls' stinky feet. After that, the others immediately felt more comfortable to reveal their favorites, such as seeing panties on the floor. They should be glad I wasn't in that meeting. Otherwise, Blue Reflection would have a lot more hand-holding, unconditional love, and sex in the missionary position. So, after all of that cutting and digging and malpractice, can we say what really killed Blue Reflection? From the messy script, horrible pacing, and horrendous amount of busy work you have to do. It wasn't one thing that killed this game. It was a combination of all this and more. But you know what? I still have a soft spot for the game. There's a strange and unique melancholy to it that I really feel like I haven't experienced in any other game. It's too bad the game it's not very good. And that's a crying shame, because it's got a lot of good in it. Oh well. Blue Reflection 2 comes out next week, so yeah, hopefully that'll have all the kinks ironed out, huh? Remember to like and subscribe in case I have to dissect that one too. But I think you've heard enough from me today, so catch you in the next video. See ya.